didn't realize how quiet my house was until the night it betrayed me. I had moved there in late November, just outside a small town where the roads thinned out and the streetlights stopped. My house sat at the edge of a cul-de-sac, backed up against a stretch of frozen woodland that no one ever developed. During the day, it felt peaceful. At night, it felt like the world ended right at my fence. That winter was brutal. Snowstorms rolled through every few days. Temperatures dropped well below freezing. And for long stretches, I didn't leave the house at all. I worked remotely, ordered groceries, and lived mostly in silence. I told myself I liked it that way. Looking back now, I think the silence was the problem. That particular night was unremarkable. I cooked dinner, cleaned up, watched something forgettable on TV, and went to bed just after 11. I remember checking the doors out of habit, front, back, garage, everything locked. I didn't check my bedroom door. I should explain something about that door. Months earlier, I had noticed the lock didn't work properly anymore. It was a push-button lock on the knob, the kind that clicks when you press it in. One night, I pressed it, and the door still opened. I tested it a few times and realized it was useless. I meant to fix it, I just didn't. I lived alone. The house was locked. It didn't feel urgent. It felt like something I could deal with later. That decision nearly cost me my life. I don't know what woke me up the first time. There was no noise, no dream that jolted me awake. I just opened my eyes suddenly, heart pounding, that deep instinctive feeling that something was wrong. The room was pitch black. At first I didn't notice anything unusual. Then my eyes adjusted, and I saw the gap. My bedroom door was open. Not wide open, just enough. A thin black line where the hallway darkness leaked into my room. I stared at it for a long time, trying to rationalize it. Maybe I hadn't shut it all the way. Maybe the house shifted from the cold. Old homes make noises. Doors move. Still, I got out of bed. I didn't turn on the light. I don't know why. Something told me not to. I walked over, pushed the door closed, and made sure it latched. I stood there for a second, listening. Nothing. Back in bed, I tried to calm myself down. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself it was nothing. But my body didn't believe me. I lay there, eyes open, listening to the house settle. Every creak sounded louder than it should have. Every gust of wind felt intentional. I must have lain there for half an hour before I finally drifted off. When I woke up again, it was worse. My heart was racing before my eyes even opened. And when they did, the door was open again. This time, the gap was wider. I didn't move. I stared at the darkness beyond the doorway, convinced that if I looked long enough, I'd see something move. The hallway felt deeper somehow, like the shadows were thicker than before. I swung my legs over the bed. That's when it happened. Something shifted just beyond the doorframe. Not a sound, not a step. Just the subtle displacement of darkness, like someone had leaned back into the hall after standing too close. My entire body locked up. I knew then, someone was inside my house. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes passed without me breathing properly. My legs felt numb. My hands shook. I finally forced myself forward and slammed the door shut, throwing my weight against it. Nothing pushed back. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then, footsteps. Slow, careful, deliberate. They moved away from my door, down the hall, toward the stairs. Each step was placed like the person knew exactly where the floorboards creaked and avoided them. I waited until I heard the back door open. Then I ran. I locked myself in the bathroom and called the police with shaking hands, whispering into the phone like the house could hear me. The officers arrived quickly. They searched every room, every closet, every window. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no broken glass, no explanation. One of them suggested I might have been dreaming. I almost believed him. Almost. As they were finishing their report, standing in the kitchen, I glanced out the back window, and I saw him. A tall silhouette standing at the edge of the trees, just beyond the reach of the porch light. Watching. He stepped back into the woods before I could speak. The officers searched again, found nothing. I didn't stay there that night. A few weeks later, after the snow melted, I went back one last time to collect my things. That's when I found the path. A narrow trail pressed into the forest floor behind my house, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. It led from deep in the woods straight to my back fence. It hadn't formed overnight. Someone had walked it many times. I also found the window. The lock was broken, just like my bedroom door. I moved out the next week. Sometimes I still wake up at night expecting to see that door open again, and sometimes I wonder how many nights it had opened before I noticed. I didn't plan on staying in that apartment much longer anyway. At least, that's what I kept telling myself before everything happened. The building sat just outside the city limits, tucked between an abandoned rail line and a stretch of industrial land that never quite got developed. It was one of those places people only lived in because it was cheap and they needed somewhere temporary. Old brick, 3 floors, narrow hallways that smelled faintly of dust and damp concrete. Most of the units had been renovated decades ago, but the bones of the place were still tired and worn down. When I first moved in, there were other tenants. Not many, but enough to make the place feel lived in. Over time, though, people left, one by one. No big announcements, no moving trucks most of the time, just doors that stayed closed forever after. Eventually, it got quiet. Unnaturally quiet. By the time this happened, I'm fairly certain I was the only person still living there. That wasn't paranoia talking. I worked late shifts and kept strange hours, so I noticed patterns. No footsteps in the stairwell, no voices through the walls, no lights turning on behind other doors. Even the shared laundry room sat unused for months at a time. Once, I left clothes tumbling in the dryer while I ran an errand, and I could hear it rumbling through the entire building, from the top floor to the ground level, because there was nothing else making a sound. Halloween night came and went, like any other work day. I got home a little before 9, tired and ready to be done with the day. No decorations outside, no trick-or-treaters anywhere near the building. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed onto the couch. I figured I'd put something on in the background, some horror video or movie, just to break the silence. That's when the knocking started. 3 loud, deliberate knocks, right on my door. I froze so hard it felt like my muscles locked in place. It wasn't just the volume, it was how sudden it was. In months of living there, no one had ever knocked on my door. No maintenance, no neighbors, nothing. I stood up slowly and walked toward the entryway. The hallway light above my door flickered faintly as I leaned in and cracked it open. Standing there was a child. A small girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing a costume that looked slightly too big for her. A mask covered her face, and she held a plastic bag loosely in her hand. The bag was completely empty. Neither of us said anything. I stared at her longer than I should have, trying to process how she could even be there. The building's front door was always locked. You needed a key to get in, and even if someone had let her in, why my door? Why now? "Are your parents here?" I finally asked. She didn't respond. She didn't even shift her weight, just stood there, facing me, silent behind the mask. I leaned out farther into the hallway and looked past her. The corridor stretched out in both directions, dark and empty. No adults, no footsteps, no sound at all. When I looked back at her, She had already turned away. Without saying a word, she walked down the hall toward the stairwell. I listened as her footsteps descended, growing fainter until I heard the front door open and close below. That was it. I shut my door and locked it immediately, heart racing. Something about the encounter felt wrong, not just creepy, deliberate, like she hadn't been there to collect candy at all. I checked the windows that faced the parking lot. My car sat alone under a flickering light. No other vehicles, no movement. After a few minutes of standing there, trying to convince myself it was just some strange Halloween fluke, curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my jacket and stepped back into the hallway. The building felt colder than usual. The stairwell echoed as I walked down, each step sounding too loud. When I reached the front door, I looked outside. Nothing. As I turned back, something caught my eye. The old keypad beside the entrance, the one that hadn't worked since I moved in, was blinking. A faint green light pulsed slowly, like it had just been activated. I tested the door. It was locked. Uneasy now, I hurried back upstairs. As I passed the second-floor hallway, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. One of the apartment doors was open. I knew for a fact it had been closed earlier. Every door in that building stayed shut. Always. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing down the corridor. No response. I didn't wait. I rushed to my unit, shut the door, and locked it behind me. Less than 10 seconds later, someone knocked. Hard. I stepped back, heart pounding. Another knock followed, heavier this time. I moved quietly toward the peephole and looked through. A man stood inches from my door. He wore dark clothing, a hood pulled low over his face. He leaned forward, so close it looked like he was listening for my breathing. When he knocked again, I heard something else. Footsteps, more than one pair. Low voices whispered outside my door, muffled but urgent. That's when I understood what the girl had been. Bait. I called 911 and backed away, scanning my apartment for somewhere to hide. There wasn't much space. No closets big enough, no bathroom window. The balcony was my only option. I slipped outside, pulling the blinds shut behind me, and crouched in the cold. A minute later, I heard the sound of my door opening. Light spilled into the living room. Two men stepped inside. They moved slowly, methodically, checking each room. One of them stopped just feet from the balcony door. I held my breath as long as I could, terrified the blinds would shift. After what felt like an eternity, they left. I stayed outside until the police arrived. They found no one. And officially, no one else was supposed to be living in that building at all. I moved out days later. I never went back alone. To this day, I can't stop thinking about that knock and how easily I almost opened the door. I've never told this story out loud before, because every time I think about it, my body reacts before my brain does. My chest tightens, my hands get cold, and for a split second, I'm right back there, standing in a building that felt too big, too quiet, and very, very wrong. At the time, I was working nights at a regional distribution warehouse on the edge of an industrial zone, the kind of place you don't notice during the day, but feels completely isolated once the sun goes down. Long concrete structure, corrugated metal walls, 3 loading bays facing an empty access road. Behind it, nothing but dark trees and overgrown brush. Normally, there were at least 2 of us on the night shift, but during the winter slowdown, management cut costs, and for nearly a month, I was scheduled completely alone from midnight until sunrise. I didn't love it, but the pay was decent, and the job itself was simple. Scan incoming pallets, log inventory, do a few equipment checks, and keep the lights on. I wore earbuds most nights just to drown out the silence. When all the machines were off, The building echoed in a way that made every movement feel louder than it should have. That night started like any other. No weather, no wind, no traffic noise from the nearby highway. Just the faint sound of insects outside and the low hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I remember noticing how still everything felt. Around 1:30 a.m., I was working near the far end of the warehouse, scanning barcodes on a pallet stacked almost to the ceiling. I had my earbuds in, music low, when something cut through it. Footsteps. Not loud, not running, just slow, deliberate steps. I pulled one earbud out and stood still. The footsteps stopped. At first, I figured my supervisor had dropped by unexpectedly. He'd done that once before and scared the hell out of me. So I waited, expecting to hear his voice. Nothing. I shrugged it off, put my earbud back in, and went back to work. Less than a minute later, the footsteps returned, this time closer and unmistakably human. I turned my music off completely. "Mark?" I called out using my supervisor's name. "That you?" The sound stopped again. I didn't get a response. I told myself I was being paranoid. Old building. Sounds travel weird at night. Stress does strange things when you're alone too long. Still, I decided to check. The office sat near the front corner of the building, partially separated by a short hallway. The lights didn't reach it very well, leaving that area in shadow. I flipped on the office light and looked inside. Empty. I checked the break room, the bathroom, even stepped outside to glance at the loading docks. Nothing. I went back to work, trying to shake the feeling that had settled in my stomach. An hour passed. I finished my scans and headed back to the office to log everything into the system. I sat down, started clicking through reports, when something made me look up at the interior window that overlooked the warehouse floor. Movement. Someone was walking between the shelving rows, not fast, not sneaking, just walking. I stood up so abruptly that my chair fell backward. "Hey!" I shouted. The silhouette vanished behind a rack. The warehouse swallowed my voice and gave nothing back. I grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, a thick metal tool from the desk, and stepped out of the office. I moved slowly down the aisles, calling out, trying to sound authoritative even though my voice kept cracking. "Whoever's here, you need to leave." Nothing. Every aisle was empty, every corner clear, no hiding spots big enough for a person. By the time I reached the far wall, my hands were shaking. The only places I hadn't checked were the side corridors, restricted areas leading to old offices that were no longer in use. I told myself I'd feel worse if I didn't check. I opened one of the doors and looked down the dim hallway, empty. As I turned to leave, I heard a door open behind me. I grabbed the door before it closed and spun around. At the far end of the corridor stood a man. He was young, maybe early 20s, but something about him was deeply wrong. His clothes were mismatched and filthy. His posture was stiff, unnatural, and his eyes were wide open, unblinking, locked directly on me. I told him he couldn't be there, that he needed to leave. He didn't react. I lied and said security was on the way. That's when he started walking toward me, slow, steady, intentional. When he was about 20 feet away, I noticed what he was holding, a heavy metal tool. Before I could react, he hurled it. It missed my head by inches and smashed into the doorframe with a sound so violent it felt like it ruptured my ears. I ran. I've never run that fast in my life. I could hear him behind me, close, relentless. I made it to the office, slammed the metal door shut, and locked it just as he hit it with his full weight. The door held. He tried the window next, slamming his shoulder into the thick, reinforced glass, pounding it with his fists. His face twisted with rage, eyes never leaving me. Then, just as suddenly, he stopped. He stared at me for a long moment, turned and walked away. The police arrived nearly 40 minutes later. The cameras showed him entering the building hours earlier, moving slowly, watching, waiting. They never identified him. I didn't work another night shift after that. And to this day, when a room gets too quiet, I listen for footsteps. Because sometimes silence isn't empty. Sometimes it's waiting.